So clicking on this video title, you guys are probably immediately thinking this only applies to left-handed shooters, and thanks to technological advances in the shooting community, it now applies to both right and left-handed shooters. The topic of AMBI controls is a very passionate topic for me. I've been a left-handed shooter my entire life, unfortunately, and I've always had to find workarounds to make things work for me as a left-handed shooter. I want to say about 8 years ago, almost 10 years ago, finding those workarounds was extremely difficult. And if you could find one, they were extremely expensive. Fast forward to 2020 and beyond, these problems have pretty much become null and void. Every company is making things centered towards left-handed shooters, or at least releasing parts that are centered towards left-handed shooters, and they're also affordable. There's also been a huge community shift in the last, 5 to 10 years, especially after 2020. We went from a community that was super into this is all I need, right? Like if this is good enough for the tier 1 operators, yeah, this is good enough for me. And now we've turned a lot of niches in this community into wanting modularity, speed, and ergonomics. So in terms of experience to speak on this particular topic, I come from the military community and the law enforcement community. I'm still a police officer in the state of Ohio. I got out of the military in 2023. My time in the military, though, was frowned upon. In fact, you weren't really even at all allowed to have AMBI controls or an AMBI mag release or anything like that. We didn't even start getting AMBI safety selectors on our M4s till my last 2 years in. And even then, it was still frowned upon for transitions. People thought that it would get snagged in your kit. All these stupid, obviously very incorrect things. We've seen this trickle into a few specific niches in the community. One just being like rail types, right? We went from 1913 rails, quad rails was all we needed because we could just throw our light, our pack, and everything on there. It was good to go. Now we have key mod, M-lock, and these kind of proprietary type rails. Companies like LWRC have, and a handful of others. We also saw this with weapon lights, right? Before, the gold standard was the Surefire Scout Light or the X300. They were only 600 lumens, and people were like, "You don't need any more lumens than that. You're going to blind yourself if you go into a room." Et cetera, insert all these quotes that people use who don't train. Then we found out that having all the lumens is great, and companies like Streamlight, Modlight started cranking out weapon lights that have insane output and then also an insane amount of modularity and ecosystems built into their product lineups. The third and best example I have is mil-spec products. For a very long time, a product being mil-spec was like a flex. People thought this is peak performance, this is what I need. And then time has gone on, really in the last 5 years, people have found out that mil-spec means essentially the lowest bidder. And we've gravitated towards other rifles in the community besides Colt or FN. Now people want Radians, American Defense Manufacturing, LWRC, Sig Sauer. I mean, the list goes on of all these companies that have pretty much put their mil-spec parts aside and made these more modular, up-to-date lowers and rifles just in general. The other funny thing is too is that if we were to make this video even a few years ago, AMBI would mean something completely different. It would mean essentially orientating towards left-handed shooters, and now the game has completely changed. There are AMBI features on rifles for right and left-handed shooters, and we're seeing this from companies like Radian, ADM, LWRC, Sig Sauer, kind of like what I mentioned before. They've all modernized and made their lowers up to 2025 standards, or at least what we would expect. Now, some of you are like, okay, well, if there's more things on a rifle, there's more things that can go wrong with a rifle. I can understand that. There are some cons to AMBI controls, and I can understand some of the arguments. We will address them in this video, but for the most part, we are talking about something that is making right and left-handed shooters more efficient and putting bullets down range, and I really can have a hard time drawing negative conclusions from that. Some of you might be wondering, what is AMBI? Who does it apply to, especially if we just talked about what we just discussed? Generally speaking, ambidextrous controls, true AMBI, means that I should be able to release the mag and send the bolt home forward and manipulate the safety all with one hand, okay? It should not be a two-handed manipulation. I should be able to take this gun, hand it to Corey, and he reloads, puts the gun on safe, sends the bolt forward the same way I do as a lefty. That is true AMBI. Now, there are companies who have kind of led us astray in thinking that, okay, well, if we just throw a AMBI safety selector on a gun, this is AMBI. Or if we just throw a mag release and a bolt catch on the left-hand side of the rifle, this is AMBI, it's good to go. While these can be good upgrades, it is not true AMBI. True AMBI is right and left-handed shooters executing the processes the exact same way with the exact same efficiency. For the most part, AMBI controls exist for pretty much all AR-15 platforms, which is mostly what we're directing this at in this video. You can make, a mil-spec lower, what I would say is half ambi. I wouldn't say you can make it fully ambi. You could with certain modifications and machining, but not everybody wants to do that. Generally speaking, you have to pay to play. Okay, so you have to get an ADM lower, a radian lower, an LWRC lower, or insert whatever company that makes a true ambi lower, right? Like we have, using this LWRC lower as an example, we have a mag release and a bolt catch on the left-hand side, and then a mag release and a bolt catch on the right-hand side. So again, to bring back to our previous point, I can reload this rifle, hand it to Corey, and he can reload it the same way. Now, price range is something really important to pay attention to, and we're going down the route of talking about, what is ambi, what's not ambi. Huge pet peeve of mine is when I see, guns in the price range of $1,500 to $2,000 or $2,000 and above, coming with zero ambi features, like mil-spec lower, zero ambi features. I have a huge beef with that. That is not correct. It is also just completely ripping off the customer. These parts that you can throw in, let's just say like a mil-spec lower for ambi shooters, is very low cost for the shooter to buy in the aftermarket, and even lower cost for a company to put in from the factory. So to me, there's zero excuse for a gun to be in that price range and come with zero ambi controls. Now, if we're looking in like the aftermarket or non-mil-spec lowers, ones that are technically proprietary like this one, I can't just take these parts and throw in a mil-spec lower. You're gonna find these weapons in a price range of $2,500 and above, $2,000 and above. Generally speaking, there is a pay-to-play wall there. That's if you want to buy the rifle as a complete gun. There are also just lower options as well. You can buy these lowers for anywhere from $200 to $400. The same goes for Radian or ADM. I commonly see those on builds very often just because of the ergonomics and what they offer the shooter. So just understand that there is going to be a price difference between making a mil-spec gun ambi and then also just buying a non-mil-spec lower or a proprietary lower. All right, so now that the boring stuff's out of the way, let's kind of get in the meat potatoes of the video. This is the fun part, okay? How do we make a mil-spec gun ambi? This has been a very long journey of mine to figure out, and thankfully now it's super easy, okay? Back in the day when I was a broadcast sheriff's deputy making $17 an hour, I had to buy once, cry once when it came to a rifle, so I got myself a Jack carbine. This was like, back when I bought this gun, this was probably, 2017, 2018 area. This gun, while it is, it has a cool Cerakote and maybe some cool titlings on it, there is nothing fancy about this gun. Like, especially in today's standards, when you look at Radian or SIG or ADM, this is not a fancy gun. But in comparison to the timeline where I bought it, it kind of was higher end. Now, when I bought this gun from the factory, if I'm not mistaken, this thing was just below $2,000 or right above it, and it came with zero ambi parts. Okay, so I just dropped $2K on a rifle and I had to spend about another $100 or so throwing ambi parts into it. Now the nice thing is it's super easy. Okay, so the first thing I threw in here was a ambidextrous mag release. I got this from Arms Unlimited. These are $20 on their website. I would call them generic. They go right into any mil-spec lower. So if you have just like anything from a $20 to a $300 mil-spec lower, this will go right into it, and it's for 20 bucks. Then right above it, I changed it to a Geisley Maritime bolt catch, and then I found that it was just way too stiff in this gun, and that's also a good option too. They're only $25, so if you don't like the Seekins one that I have on here right now, Geisley's a good alternative. They still make it very affordably. The Seekins falls down the same route as most of this stuff. They're in the price range of $25 to $30. For me, I found that this was the best button because it gives you the most amount of leverage on the top portion of the ping pong paddle. And it's really easy to hit with your index finger, and you guys will see that through multiple B-roll clips that will be thrown in here. This gives me, when it comes to send the bolt forward, a lot of leverage over that piece and makes things real smooth, real easy. Now, the cool thing about the safety selector is that you can find these in a lot of different places for $20 and under. I got mine from Arms Unlimited. I think it was like $25 or $30 there. You can find them in other places for way cheaper. But even then, this is just basically a mil-spec ambi safety selector. This is nothing fancy. You can get really cool ones like the Radiant Talon or something like that, but you're gonna be paying 60, 80 bucks for those. So it just depends on how much you want to drop. Now you might be wondering, okay, well, how do I make if I'm a right-handed shooter, how do I make my mil-spec gun ambi? And really the answer is a Magpul bad lever or something along the type of that. There are so many companies now making a bad lever type, knockoff, rip-off, or just a better version of whatever it is you want to call it. And those are probably the best route for you to take in terms of making a mil-spec gun ambi for a right-handed shooter, because you can manipulate the bolt or send the bolt home forward or with your index finger. You can also drop the mag with your index finger, and then same thing, you can manipulate the safety now with the same hand. So that's kind of how you get on the route of doing that as a right-handed shooter. Now, what I will say, bouncing back to my lefty guys here, is that you don't need an aftermarket bolt catch. You can just use a mil-spec one, especially after you have like 500,000 rounds through it. It seems like the Cerakote and the Parkerization or whatever it is kind of loosens up here, and you can send it home very easily with your index finger. So just want to understand, just make it very clear, you guys don't need this piece, especially if you're tight on a budget like I was. When I got this gun, it was literally bone stock. I did pay the extra money to throw in the AMBI Controls in it. Outside that, a lot of the stuff that's on here now, I added way after the fact. When I first got it, I kept the same bone stock trigger in it. I was using a Streamlight light. Pretty sure I had like a Redfield optic on here, like really budget stuff. I wanted to get such a good rifle that I, didn't understand at the time the necessities of also good aftermarket products as well, or understanding like what a good optic is or what a good light is and stuff. So just want to point that out real quick. So for this particular build, I spent a little bit more money because I wanted to try out different things. For this one, I went with the Strike Industries mag release, and then the same thing, Seekins bolt catch. And then I also went with Radiant Talon safety selectors. Now, these alone, you're looking at over $100 easy. The ones on my Jack carbine here are nowhere near that. You're gonna be spending maybe $60 if you wanna get all three of them. Again, you don't need the bolt catch, so if you're really tight in a budget, all you really need is that AMBI safety selector and that Seekins bolt catch. And then really, if you wanna get nitty gritty with it and you're really super tight in a budget, you really don't even need the AMBI safety selector either, but I think it's super convenient to have because it helps you build a better firing grip on the gun. Fast forward to 2025, or maybe just really within the last 5 years, we've seen guns like this surface, okay? So I guess depending on where you come from with this, you would be calling this factory AMBI, commercial, true AMBI, whatever it is the term you want to use, but these guns come from the factory with controls on both the left and right-hand side of the rifle for both left and right-handed shooters, meaning we can execute reloads, safe the gun, reload the gun, gas it up, all these same things whether you're right or left-handed. Like I said earlier in the video, there's a paywall here, okay? To get guns like this from the factory, they're generally in a completely different price range than what we see mil-spec parts being in, okay? Each company has their own bullet points to take away from this. Generally speaking, typically when you get in this price range, you're seeing a lot more proprietary systems, milling things from a solid block of aluminum or solid block of steel. A lot of rigidity, things completely built for accuracy, like, basically the Corvette specs of the gun world. Okay, that's basically what this price range bumps you into. Now, these are pretty straightforward. Like I said, every gun that has features like this is a little bit different. Radiant has a completely proprietary lower mag release and then also bolt catch. And then same thing on the other side. These are pretty cool because you can release the bolt and mag release, with the right hand on the right-hand side. Now, looking at my LWRC here, kind of the same thing, but like almost a more mil-spec-y-ish version. So mag release for the lefty is very generous, very large. I would call that like a mil-spec bolt catch. And then same thing on the right-hand side, very much a mil-spec bolt catch and mag release on the right-hand side. But this is still true AMBI because, both a right and left-handed shooter will manipulate this gun and use it in the same way. So looking at this SIG, this chunky boy, we got pretty much the same thing, right? We got a pretty generous mag release for a lefty, a mil-spec-ish, bolt catch for a lefty. And on the right-hand side, we have AMBI Controls. I wouldn't call that mag release mil-spec at all. And then same thing with this bolt release. Obviously, you would just push this down to release the bolt. This is another example of, one of many where we talk about true AMBI guns from the factory. Now to kind of like see in action of what we're discussing here, we're gonna head to the range. I'm gonna show you guys from a left-handed point of view how to conduct a reload at the most efficient and fastest way you can. And then we're gonna have a right-handed shooter demonstrate the same thing. All right, guys, so the last part of this video, I wanted to go over like actually how to do a reload fast, okay? Now, this being said, I am a firm believer that shooting is an individual sport. Everything is more of the concept of like there is a way to do something, not the way to do something. I think when it comes to reloads, there are a multitude of factors that can affect them, one being environmental and then also one being movement. But that being said, there are some nuggets in here I'm going to point out to you guys that are certainly faster than other concepts, but just understand that this isn't like the end-all be-all way to do a reload. There are a multitude of ways that are also still very fast, okay? The first thing we're going to kind of cover is like 3 big components with reloads that I like to touch on. So first and foremost being, you need to understand that the more processes you break down are the more processes you have to then do again, okay? So very commonly, I see people shoot, they'll break down their rifle, reload, and then come back up and shoot again. Or they'll shoot, bring it over their shoulder while they're moving, reload, then shoot again. These are all great, okay? But the problem is you have to then make up all the steps. So I have to remount the rifle, reestablish a better grip, and then reestablish the pressures for that grip, okay? The other big thing is the overall goal is to go from a unloaded rifle to a loaded rifle as fast as we possibly can. Okay, however it is you prefer to do it, doesn't matter. It just needs to be done as fast as you possibly can. Now, the hardest thing, the third and final point with this, the hardest thing in my opinion, is establishing a good grip and then reestablishing the pressures. It doesn't mean anything if you can reload a gun or a rifle fast, but not establish the proper grip and proper pressures after to make the gun repeatable and predictable after, okay, for the follow-up shots. I see people do wicked fast reloads all the time. The unfortunate part is sometimes the byproduct of that is them leaving their elbow out, which gives the gun leverage over them, or they don't establish proper grip and pressure back into the mount, and then it makes the gun bouncy and it bounces around their shoulder. I'm using a suppressed rifle, so you guys can see when this gun is suppressed, it's a little bit thumpy. So when I don't have a good mount, you guys will be able to tell, especially after some of the reloads we're going to be doing. And then same thing with Corey. All right, so now let's actually get into how we're going to reload the rifle. You guys are going to notice, again, I'm left-handed. This process that I use to do this two-handed is no different than how a right-handed person would do it with an actual completely AMBI rifle, meaning the controls on the left-hand side are the same as the controls on the right-hand side, or at least do the same thing. Okay, so after this, we will kind of go into like a more mil-spec reload as well. I'll try to touch on as many aspects as I can, as I know a lot of people have different rifle setups, and it's not always a completely AMBI gun for everybody. So to kind of get into this, just doing it live. Okay, so I'm going to fire my 2 rounds. At this point, I have a soft, mushy trigger. The gun is, it sounds different. It also feels different. Instead of getting a recoil impulse back, I only felt the one go back and I felt it lock. And then I also have a soft, mushy trigger. Okay, this is like the dead indication that I have either an empty gun or a malfunction. Based off that bolt locking back to the rear and the fashion that it did, just based off previous experience, I know I'm gonna encounter a reload here. Okay, so as soon as I get that, I'm gonna drop the mag. It's one of the first things I'm doing while simultaneously reaching for the other. Okay, the other thing is too, that I hear a lot of people kind of argue about, is your vision, okay? The reason why we're able to do reloads as fast as we can is because I put my vision to what's important next. If I have an empty gun, whether it's on the stage of competition or the stage of real life, the most important thing to do right there and then and now is to get the gun back up and working so I can put bullets where I want them to go. So it makes no sense for me to stare at a target or stare at a person, okay? What I want to do is transfer my eyes to what's important next, which is going to be this mag well, okay? So I'm going to be watching the mag well, insert, gas it up, and go. Now you guys saw that was like happening in a very fast fashion, okay? Because once I've pressed this button to release the mag and I'm coming in with my next mag, my finger is up here waiting on home base, okay? So just to kind of demonstrate that again, all right? My finger is up here waiting on home base. So as soon as I drop the mag, I'm already up here waiting. So as soon as I insert, I can gas it up and go, okay? So this is like some things to keep in mind. We'll go all the way through this. All right, so we're here. Now we're back to shooting, right? So this is the hard part. We don't want to come back here and shoot from here, okay? 90s SWAT called. They want their mag well grip back. That's not a proper firing place. We know we have no leverage over the gun when we shoot from this position. A lot of times I see people do their reloads and they'll come back here and shoot from here. It's kind of gooberish, guys, okay? We want to get a good grip and good pressures on the gun. So you have to come back up to where your established point of contact is on the rail. So for me, it's in front of this foregrip here, and then thumb over top the rail. And then also make sure that the pressures are still the same. So I'm still pulling back into the gun. I'm still establishing lever and friction over the front of the gun, but still applying pressure back into the mount. Now, the other thing that's important too is reestablishment of the mount. Sometimes, not everybody keeps it in their shoulder. Okay, sometimes you have to pop it out or you have to come under, okay? These are things that environment can dictate, or maybe movement can dictate. It is a very understandable thing to tuck the gun underneath your shoulder or above your shoulder when you're moving or you have like very close cover. I understand that, okay? But we're talking about how to do this as fast as we possibly can. So there's no point, like one of the first points we brought up, right, is we have to repeat steps if we break down the gun, which does not equal speed. So the more that we have to repeat, the less fast it's going to be. Now, if I keep the gun planted in my shoulder, it's the less steps I have to produce or reproduce to put the gun back on target where I want it to be, establish the grip that I want, the pressures that I want, and put bullets where I want. All right, so kind of just like to walk through that. I know I was in a few different places at once, so I'll try to make this as simple as I can for you guys. So I'm gonna come up, fire my one. I get a soft, mushy trigger to the rear. I felt the bolt lock back to the rear. As soon as I start reaching for another mag, I'm simultaneously dropping this one. Index finger moves back up to home base, insert, gas it up and go, and then I'll fire whatever rounds on target after, okay? So, the thing to keep in mind is economy of motion. If we break down the rifle, these things are adding time. If we do not establish proper grip, it's gonna technically add time or make the process harder, less predictable, less repeatable. Okay, now do understand, I'm teaching this from the shoulder because in my opinion, that is one of the fastest ways to execute a reload, okay? It's not always completely necessary to break the gun down every single time. It's also just a very easy, repeatable process. I can keep it mounted in my shoulder still. I don't have to repeat things. All I have to do at that point, put the mag in successfully, drop the bolt, reestablish grip, and send rounds where I want them to go. This can be done the same no matter, regardless of the reload process. So regardless of if your gun's ambi or not, or if it's just a traditional mil-spec built gun, okay? The reload process is gonna be the same. Now, the speed at which the reload can be done is typically where I see the biggest change, okay? You can still do a very fast reload utilizing a mil-spec gun and mil-spec controls, 100%, okay? But it's not as economical, all right? And what I mean by that is I can send the bolt forward, I can release the mag and send the bolt forward with one hand now instead of having to use two. Because traditionally I have to drop the mag with my index finger of my firing hand, insert the mag with my non-dominant hand, and send the bolt home forward with that hand. I'm doing more processes stretched across two hands. Now I can do one process with one hand and only have to worry about inserting the mag with my offhand. From there, as soon as I insert, I can get it back up to where it needs to be, which is on the proper placement of grip on the front of the gun. To me, that makes the most sense in terms of economy of motion and speed. Of course, like I said earlier, this is all personal preference. Shooting is an individual sport. I'm just trying to communicate to you guys what I have found most advantageous for me and what I have found to be the most fast for me. Now I'm gonna bring Corey up. I'm gonna kind of walk you guys through how this is gonna look if you're right-handed. So I'm gonna kind of walk you guys through this slowly. I want there to be a visual representation of how an ambi reload is gonna look as a right-handed shooter, okay? I'm gonna kind of walk Corey through this. All right, so Corey, go ahead and fire your first round, then stay in that position until I give you otherwise. All right, so Corey's bolt has locked back to the rear at this point. He then at this point has to just drop the mag, so go ahead and drop the mag while simultaneously reaching for a new one. He's gonna send it home at the same time with his index finger, okay? And then he'll fire 2 successful more rounds. Now, go ahead and throw it on safe. The rounds he fires off after are up to you. If you guys wanna do 1R1s or 1R5s, whatever it is, okay, it doesn't matter. We're just trying to do this for demonstration purposes. The point is the process is still the same with a truly ambi firearm if you're left or right-handed, okay? Now I'm gonna have Corey go through this of more of a mil-spec reload as a right-handed shooter because most of you are right-handed shooters, most of you are not left-handed shooters. I didn't leave my lefties out. The first demonstration we gave is still how you would do it if you were left-handed, regardless if you're running a fully ambi gun or just like one of the mil-spec guns I made ambi, okay? The process is gonna be the same if you're left-handed. So let's go ahead and flip over to the other side. We're gonna go through the same thing, but I just, again, want there to be a visible representation of what you guys are seeing on the left-hand side of the gun. We're gonna execute more of like what I would call a mil-spec reload, okay? So a traditional reload, like if you're in the service, like how your reload would look if you had an M4 or something, okay? So again, Corey's gonna come up, put one on target. He's gonna drop the mag while simultaneously reaching for a new one and then gas it up with his thumb and fire his next round. Okay, as you guys saw, it can still be done very quickly. Okay, but in your opinion, when it comes to like economy of motion, because you're relatively new to the ambi reload, yeah. Okay, what do you think you could probably do faster?
I have a big problem with grabbing the magazine too low and having to slide my hand up to hit this bolt release. So doing it the mil-spec way, it takes a lot of time. I'm still not there on speed. Okay. So having this ambidextrous lever is just so much faster.
Yeah, and you guys, it's easier for him to keep the proper mount as well, because again, we're accomplishing more tasks now with one hand versus two hands, okay? So we're gonna put this on a timer, and guys, again, this is kind of just for demonstration purposes. I want you guys to understand that there is a time component to this, and that's mostly what I like to kind of harp on. Now, speed isn't everything, right? There still is an accuracy portion, you still have to do it correctly. But just to kind of give you guys some raw time in terms of feedback, here's kind of what we're looking at. Okay, so we're gonna do a 1R2 on a target that's 25 yards from us. My goal is to put all 3 rounds in the A zone. Again, what I'm really concerned with is the time here, okay? The accuracy portion can be a byproduct of it, like especially if you don't remount correctly or establish proper pressures. But I do want you guys to understand and see that the processes are debatably one being quicker than the other. Let's start with a traditional reload. Now guys, on my Radian here, okay, I have a bolt release on the right-hand side. So this is kind of how I would do a more mil-spec reload with this particular gun. So we're gonna start with that first. I still can do this pretty spicy, okay, but the process is different. Okay, now I have to do two different things with two different hands, and we'll see if I can accomplish it in the same time standard I could without doing it, just doing two processes with one hand.
Stand by.
Okay, got hung up on the sling a little bit. I'm not gonna hold that against the gun or really too much against the gun, but go ahead, what's the time?
3:23.
So 3:23, a one reload 3 in 3 seconds, not terrible, okay? Now, let's do it with without using the right side AMBI controls. I'll just use the left side.
Shooter ready.
Yep.
Stand by. Wow, 246.
Okay, so that was still essentially almost a whole second faster, and I had to hang up on the reload. Being able to do two processes with one hand, meaning dropping the mag and then sending the bolt home forward, versus having to drop the mag with my index finger and my firing hand, pull the mag out, insert it with my right hand, and send the bolt home forward with that hand is, you know, debatably a little bit slower. Now you can make the argument, hey, whatever it is you train is probably going to be faster. I completely agree with that. I will say this is one of those things, I'd love to hear your guys' comments about this, because I feel that there is less steps for me to do utilizing the controls on the left-hand side of the gun versus the right-hand side of the gun in terms of economy of motion. I feel like it's much faster. The other thing I also want to bring light to is that the way that I'm doing this reload, I send the bolt home with my index finger and dropping the mag. I feel like other companies have started to catch on to this, and they're starting to do it with other guns for right-handed shooters because it is faster. Now again, the faster portion can be debatable. I understand that. We did put on a timer. It was faster. Granted, I train this way more than the other, so I can understand the counter argument there. But what we're seeing in the industry, Sig Sauer being a prime example, LWRC, Radian, LMT does it. There's a handful of other companies that do this. And I feel like this is being done. This is becoming a trend in the industry because one process is at least a little bit smoother or at least a little bit faster, okay? Now again, I'd love to hear you guys' comments about this. I think this can be a pretty loaded topic, and there's a lot of different points of views on it to understand. You know, the other counter argument to this is that the more stuff we put on a gun, the more things there are to go wrong. And I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to say. That being said, if you're buying a quality gun, these things probably shouldn't happen. Just to kind of reiterate, this is the only thing I want to say again, is that, guys, shooting is an individual sport, okay? I want you guys to go out and try this for yourself. Find out what's faster for you. Find out what's easier on your hands, what's easier on your wrists. Is it too hard to hold the rifle up and then conduct the reload at the same time? Do you have to tuck it every single time? Et cetera, et cetera. You know, I understand both points of view. At one point in my shooting career, I was constantly tucking the gun to do a reload every single time, and I just got tired of having to repeat the process, okay? Because I was losing time, especially when it came to like shooting 3-gun or something like that, or just shooting with my buddies on the range. It was noticeably slower for me to do that, so I stopped doing it. But that's just my experience. Everyone's experience varies. All right, so I think another reasonable question to bring up is like safety. My time in the military, a lot of people like to throw the gun back on safe while they were loading the gun. To me, this seemed like a unnecessary step. The gun is unloaded. It's pointed in the direction that I want to put bullets. The gun cannot fire right now. The bolt's locked back to the rear, gun's empty. Even with the loaded mag in the gun cannot fire. I'm pulling the trigger, it can't do anything, okay? So I feel like locking the safety or putting the safety on while you're doing a reload is just another step that you have to repeat. While the key thing you guys need to understand, the reason why I don't put the gun on safe for a reload is because my intent has not changed. I am doing this reload with the full intent of shooting again. It would make zero sense to me based off of speed alone. It does not make any sense to put the gun back on safe. There's multiple schools of thoughts on this. This has been something that came from the military for safety reasons. This is the one thing I'll kind of die on a hill over, okay, is when you put this gun back on safe for a reload, there's just no point. If the intent has changed, absolutely, I can understand throwing the safety back on. That makes complete sense to me. If your intent has not changed, it just doesn't make sense to put it back on. I did want to address this real quick because I know people are going to ask, especially guys that are in the military or maybe like even law enforcement. People want you to put the gun back on safe after you fired. Again, the key term is intent, okay? If your intent changed, safe the gun back up, sure. If your intent is the same, leave the gun on fire. This This is this is the one argument when it comes to reloads that I just don't understand. And if somebody can outperform me while having the gun on safe, I can totally respect that. Or somebody can outperform me on a reload while putting the gun on safe and then putting it back on fire to shoot immediately again after. Cool, man. I guess you've just trained it more than I have. But for me, I feel like it's an unnecessary step, and it's not doing anything practically or tactically. So like I said at the start of this video, this is a very passionate topic for me because this is like a wall or a barrier I've had to break through a lot because you know, I'm really into training, really into shooting. I have a lot of rifles set up and built exactly the way I want them. You know, there's a price wall with that stuff, and you know, sometimes you have to pay to play. And I've been on both sides of that aisle. I've been on the side where, you know, I don't really have enough money to throw into this rifle to make it the way I want, and I have to work through these problems. And I've been on the other side, you know, where I am now, and I don't really have to worry about that too much anymore. And I understand both sides of the argument. I feel like in 2025, there is no excuse to have a gun that's not built to you. I know when I was first getting into this, a lot of people were really against individualizing a firearm to its shooter because if some situation happens, you got to pick up someone else's gun, which is completely ridiculous. They think you won't be able to use it. These are like all the things I've heard throughout my military career, my law enforcement career, all these things that we just kind of view as boomer lore now. Or when I hear people say stuff like this, it's just really obvious to me that they haven't done the homework, they haven't shot enough, they just probably don't go to the range enough. Otherwise, they would have figured it out for themselves by now. This is a loaded topic. I know there's a lot of, you know, passionate believers on both sides of the aisle. I think it's fairly obvious which side of the aisle I'm on, you know, and like I said, I understand both sides, but these parts are so affordable now and they're so readily available. I don't really think there's an excuse to not build a gun the way you want it and to make it more efficient and make it faster for you when it comes to doing actions like reloads or disengaging the gun off safe. My biggest suggestion to you is put this stuff in a metric format for you. Get a shot timer, maybe one of your friends, or if you have a truly ambi lower versus a non-ambi lower, put yourself on a shot timer. There is a clear time difference between the two. Can you train to the point with a mil-spec lower and get your reloads to the point where it's matching someone with an ambi lower? You could, sure. I think there's probably some people out there that could do it. In my opinion, you're just working harder instead of working smarter. The economy of motion is a thing, and I think that's a policy and a process that a lot of people need to adopt. Let us know in the comments section below what you guys think. I know there's a lot of passionate believers out there that maybe of the other side of the aisle. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. If you guys enjoyed the video, maybe you want to see a pistol format version of this instead of a rifle format, make sure you guys comment below, like and subscribe, follow us on Instagram. We'll see you guys later.